Star Wars 7x7, episode 2870. So we've been talking about Brotherhood on and off this week. Obviously took a pause yesterday, but we're going to talk about Brotherhood again from a different angle today. Punch it. Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod and this is Star Wars 7x7, your daily dose of Star Wars joy, and thank you so much for joining me for it. So one of the fun things about Star Wars books that I've discovered over the years is the whole audiobook situation. I never really listened to audiobooks prior to my podcasting about Star Wars and Star Wars storytelling, and it's just so cool to enjoy. I literally have enjoyed every single audiobook and possibly more than the written book itself. I don't always get the opportunity to do one or the other, but every time I get an audiobook opportunity, I jump at the chance. And Brotherhood is terrific. Now, the reason why I jump at the whole audiobook thing is because you really do kind of get a cinematic experience. Like when you've got it in your ears, it sounds like listening to a Star Wars movie. I mean, it's just come up in conversation, and actually, like, even with the ILM little mini documentary that came out, not ILM, excuse me, Skywalker Sound, the Skywalker Sound documentary that came out on May the 4th, where they had a blank screen and they had sounds and sound effects happening, and you're like, I can tell this is Star Wars. And they talked about how when that's not there, like, it just doesn't feel like Star Wars. Well, these audiobook productions really give it to you. It's just astounding. And what I think is particularly notable in this case is that it seems like we don't get a lot of prequel era stuff in the new canon. We haven't so far, so we are 8 years into the new canon, and there have been a couple of novels in that space, but not a lot. I think the last one really of significance was Master and Apprentice by Claudia Gray, which was a Qui-Gon Jinn / Obi-Wan Kenobi adventure, and that one also was actually narrated by Jonathan Davis, who is the narrator for Star Wars Brotherhood, and I feel like he's a really great choice for this. And I was thinking about that in terms of the fact that we were talking recently about Mark Thompson doing audiobook narration, and he's been doing the ones for the High Republic, the adult novels from Del Rey, and he has a certain style of delivery, and Jonathan Davis has a certain style of delivery as well, and I really feel like Jonathan Davis is very well made for the prequel era stuff. I mean, he has a very stately, a very courtly kind of delivery on some level, but is also able to go across a spectrum of voices and characters and experiences. And yet there's also kind of I want to say a certain darkness in his voice, and I feel like that's really appropriate for the time period because of all the machinations that Palpatine has in the works. I'd say there's probably a bit more brightness and optimism in Mark Thompson's default voice versus Jonathan Davis's, which feels a little bit, more formal and, possibly a little bit darker. And I don't mean that in judgment-y terms. In other words, I'm not saying one's better than the other. I'm saying that I find that the different qualities are being chosen by Penguin Random House Audio very appropriately, at least for my own experience of these stories. And the other thing that's cool about this is prequel era music. So there's a soundtrack for this thing, and it's Phantom Menace stuff, it's Attack of the Clones stuff. Like, it's right in those alleys, and it's just exciting to hear that music because I feel like I don't quite hear it that often, and I feel like Star Wars storytelling is, more in the original trilogy era and more in the sequel trilogy era, so I feel like I don't get to hear that music as often as I might otherwise, and it's really great to be reminded of it and of how good John Williams' music is across the entirety of the Skywalker saga. Now, in this particular case, I read the book first and then listened to the audiobook, and so I feel like when I do that, when I have that experience, I get a little impatient with the audiobook version. It's like, okay, yeah, I've read that part, come on, get to the action, right? So the time that, say, Mike Chen spends inside the head of a particular character and writing about their experiences and their reflections upon just stuff that's happened before before in the novel and stuff that's happened contextually in the Star Wars storytelling and their reminiscences and the conclusions that they're arriving at and their frustrations and whatnot. I feel like I get a little bit impatient when I'm going through that, and I kind of want them to just get to the dialogue and get to the action and whatnot. But I don't generally have that experience when it goes the other way around, when I listen to the audiobook first and then I get to the book, and that may be because I end up kind of scanning the book a little bit more in that regard. So there's a part of me that wants to say that I felt like Mike Chen's introductory narrative stuff in each chapter felt like it was a little longer when it was conveyed in audiobook form, but it could also just be because of the fact that I'd already read the book version and the audiobook situation. Maybe I just need to start hitting 1.5 on it and speed it up. But it really is a fantastic way to experience a Star Wars story, and especially if you haven't tried the books but you enjoy the live action experience. I mean, it is the nearest thing to it, and having a professional tell you a Star Wars story is just really fun. So yeah, I think it's great. And if you haven't tried it and you're curious, we actually have a thing set up with Audible where you can get a free book download and a free 30-day trial. It's at audibletrial.com/SW7X7. Once again, that is audibletrial.com/SW7X7. And I do want to thank Penguin Random House Audio for sending me a copy of the book to review, so that way I could talk about it with you too. So that is my non-spoiler look at the novel Brotherhood, narrated by Jonathan Davis. I will say one last thing, that even reading the book, there was something that didn't quite hit me the same way as hearing the audiobook version of it. Just right in the opening, when the introduction talks about how Padawans have been rushed into their knighthood so that way they can be more easily integrated with the clone army. And you start to get a sense of just how tragic this whole situation is, and you get a new kind of view on the freight train that is getting up to speed, that is just going to run completely out of control. So yeah, there are moments like that too that are absolutely remarkable. So that's going to do it for this episode of the show, and it just remains for me to say thank you so much for joining me for it as always, and may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.
7x7 is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited, or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2021 by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.